but also thank the National Assembly for the invitation extended to the foundation to help with this capacity building session. We have representatives from the ECOWAS Parliament who are here. We have representatives. I'd like to welcome the members of the ECOWAS Parliament who came to support this occasion. I'd earlier, of course, mentioned ECOWAS presence of key ministers this occasion. I'd earlier, of course, mentioned ECOWAS presence of key ministers this morning. This occasion. I'd earlier, of course, mentioned ECOWAS presence of key ministers this morning. This occasion. I'd earlier, of course, mentioned ECOWAS now invite the Executive Director of the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, Ms. Anne Iyonu, to say a few words of welcome and also talk to us about the objectives of the meeting. Anne.
Good morning, Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia. Good morning, Your Excellency, the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. Good morning, the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Clerk of the House, Honorable Ministers in the House, distinguished parliamentarians, invited guests from the ECOWAS Parliament, members of the Nigerian High Commission, members of the Fourth Estate, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you all this morning for finding time out of your very busy schedule to be here at the capacity building workshop for the Gambian National Assembly. The Goodluck Jonathan Foundation is an independent, non-partisan, non-governmental organization that promotes the advancement of peace and prosperity on the African continent. And over the last years, since the establishment of the foundation, we have actively explored opportunities and contributed to promoting the security of the state and their people within the context of respect for the rule of law, fundamental human rights, and democratic principles. So as part of activities aimed at limiting instability and violence and protecting the integrity of the democratic process in West Africa, convening this capacity building workshop is the reason why we're here today. So the purpose of the workshop is to enhance and strengthen the role of the Parliament, to build the needed capacity of parliamentarians to better deliver on their legislative mandates, and especially as majority are first-timers to the National Assembly. We all are aware that sub-Saharan Africa is undergoing a democratic recession. And so beyond the sudden resurgence of traditional old cycle, incumbent heads of state use different and more subtle methods to stay in power. We have issues from Mali to Guinea to Burkina Faso, all around the region. Our democracy is taking a backseat. And so it has become very important, for a lack of a better word, that we need to begin to interrogate these issues and find out ways collectively to strengthen the democracy we practice in the sub-region. And like we like to say at the foundation, the legislature is a critical element of an effective democracy. So the legislature's role in lawmaking, representation, and oversight makes it an indispensable part of government, because parliamentarians play a very crucial role in every democratic dispensation. Your role as parliamentarians seated here today cannot be overemphasized. And so it requires that if you are first-timers, you need the capacity to be able to better deliver on your legislative mandates. And so that's why we're convening this today, to help build your capacity to be able to transcend beyond party lines, beyond personal views, and put the collective interests of the nation at the forefront. And so, like I said earlier, it becomes imperative to strengthen and enhance the role of the Parliament, because most of you here are first-timers to the National Assembly. And so in the light of the foregoing, that's why the Foundation convened this Our aim for being here today is to aid strengthen your role as members of the parliament to better perform your constitutional functions, including capacity building for parliamentary services technical team, to also better service the parliament in its oversight activities. And so the main objective, or some of the objectives why this was convened, is to, one, develop strategies towards sustaining democratic principles. Because like I said, the legislature is a critical element of an effective democracy. And so if you want to better sustain democratic principles, you need to have a strong parliament. And also to explore strategies aimed at forestalling future democratic constraints and challenges. Most of the issues we're having across the region, in terms of what we like to call the constitutional coup, has been aided by parliament. And so we need to begin to explore strategies that we can forestall some of these challenges, we can forestall some of these constraints, because you play an oversight role. You help to oversight government institutions. You also help to balance both the executive and the judiciary. To build better legislative capacity and provide support to parliament, to enhance oversight activities through improved committee systems, and of course, the effective use of parliamentary mechanisms and strengthen technical support to committees. And so, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished parliamentarians, Your Excellencies, on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this. We always say that if you take a project or an initiative to a people and there's no buy-in from the people you are selling it to, that is bound to fail. Thank you for buying into this idea. Thank you for buying into the fact that you needed capacity building. So you own the process. Now that you've bought into it, we know that you own the process and that you will do better and better deliver on your legislative mandates. Thank you very much for having us. Thank you for being here this morning. And I pray that we have a fruitful deliberation and a successful event. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Ionu, for your welcoming remarks, as well as an outline of the objectives of our gathering here today and tomorrow, and in particular the emphasis which you placed on the important role of the National Assembly in the making of any successful democracy, not only in the Gambia, but also the rest of Africa and the world. No democracy can be complete except it is backed by an effective and functioning legislative arm of government, performing its role of oversight, but also of proactive legislation in favor of the welfare of citizens. Thank you for those words. And I have the pleasure of inviting the Honorable Clerk of the National Assembly of the Gambia, Momodu Sise, who is not a stranger to any of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, Mr. Badara A. Diouf, His Excellency, the former President of the Republic of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, the Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of the Gambia, Honorable Fabakary Tombong Jatta, Honorable Ministers here in present, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, Honorable C.D.S. Kenjai, the Honorable Majority and Minority Leaders, Honorable Members of the National Assembly, Honorable Members of the ECOWAS Parliament, Executive Director of the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation and staff of the National Assembly here in present, distinguished invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. Let me first welcome all honorable members of the National Assembly and all distinguished guests to this very important capacity development that seeks to critically examine the state of democracy in the sub-region, focusing on some of the major trends enablers, and consequences of decline in the proper legislative process and procedures, on constitutional tenure, elongation, and exploit the best approach to mitigate these challenges. I will also express our profound gratitude and appreciation to the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation for honoring the request of the Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly to build capacity of members of the National Assembly. Special thanks also go to the Honorable Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament for partnering with us in this noble initiative. Noble in the sense that it has been mentioned by the Executive Director that this is the first rollout that they're making to parliaments. Honorable members, the significance of this capacity building engagement cannot be overemphasized. There is already growing interest, more than ever before, in issues relating to democracy and good governance around the world. This is a reflection of the increasing acceptance of the fact that democracy and good governance are not a luxury, but a fundamental requirement to achieve sustainable development. Parliament, as one of the key state institutions in a democratic system of governance, have a critical role to play in promoting democracy and good governance. As the democratic elected representatives of the people, Parliament have honorable tasks to ensure government by the people and for the people. In the performance of their key functions of legislation, representation, and oversight, Parliament can actively engage in the development and implementation of laws, policies, and practices that promote democracy and good governance. The forum therefore will explore and analyze the contribution of National Assembly of the Gambia, the contribution the National Assembly of the Gambia can make to promote good governance and consolidate democracy, peace and security, particularly in the sub-region. The forum will also focus on the representational role of the National Assembly, thereby examining how honorable members can respond to the growing public pressure for greater involvement, information accountability, and better service delivery to citizens. The engagement will also accord the honorable members the opportunity to share experiences with resource persons that have been ably put together by the Foundation to illustrate the different options that the National Assembly can use to better engage with the citizens to fulfill its role of representation, and identify innovation and experiences from other countries to show how parliamentary representation is evolving, how Parliament are responding to citizens' expectations, and how the representational role of Parliament can be strengthened so that citizens can actively and efficiently participate in decision-making processes through Parliament. The training is therefore timely and relevant, considering that a vast majority of members of the 6th Legislature are new. They are new, but they are trainable. And so far, so good. When we start these committee sessions, we realize that with such type of training, you
to deliver a program of support to the National Assembly. And
growing a democratic principles. Because like I said, the legislature is a critical democratic constraints and challenges. Most of the issues we're having
to deliver a program of support to the National Assembly.
in the development I encourage Honorable and being interested in your training. He is always looking for funds or partners so that the capacity of the 6th Legislature is built to equip you to perform better. On that note, I would like to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mahmoud Sise, the Clerk of the National Assembly of the Gambia. And I'd like to thank you again for the support which you and your team gave to the foundation as we prepared the details of the program for this event. At this point, the National Assembly, it gives me great pleasure and honor to welcome His Excellency Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and Special ECOWAS Mediator for Mali, to give his special remarks.
Thank you so much. We spent quite some time to start this program, so I'll just summarize my remarks. But I'm really very, very happy to be a part of this process today, that we're collectively here to work with the members of the National Assembly of the Gambia to strengthen them in some areas and to see how we could reason together for the common interest of our country. My remarks here will center on, because it's not a technical speech, the technical people will take over after this opening remarks, but we'll center on the parliamentarian that you are. Partisan politics, because we all belong to parties, and parties have their own vision and mission. And of course, development of our nation. How do we, as parliamentarians, members of political parties, and how we will be loyal and work hard to develop our country. The parliament is a key part of democracy. It's key. Different arguments about it. And if you look at the history of my glasses. My glasses. I didn't come with my glasses. Parliament evolved. Some will argue that parliament is even older than democracy, that what you stand for predates democracy, as we know it today. The term democracy, as we all know, which means rule by the people, as coined by the Greeks, originated in ancient Athens at about the 5th century. However, the recorded history of parliament dates back to the Middle Ages, before the 5th, in about 930 BC, when the first assembly of representatives, known as Albingi, was convened at a place called Thingvellir in Iceland, thus becoming the earliest version of the parliament we know today. However, modern parliamentary system originated in England in the late 13th century and was formalized by King Edward I of England at a meeting in 1295, where representatives of rural landowners and townsmen were invited to participate in the King's Council as members of the Commons. This is the evolution of Parliament. So you will agree with me that even in this present day, the essence of democracy centers on the activities of the Parliament. Without effective Parliament, there can never be democracy. The executive arm of government, even during military time, you always have. The judiciary is always there. But during military time, you don't have elected people to represent their people, because there will be major conflict between the interests of the people and the military. And that is why military governments, no matter how good they are regarded as dictatorial governments, because they will always want to do what is best for them without minding the people. because there's nobody to convey the voice of the ordinary people to government. So you will look at the issue of parliament, democracy, and good government, and the issue of separation of powers. As long as we are all in government, whether you're in parliament, whether you're in executive arm of government, the essence is we want to develop our people. And I always say simply that government is to make the people of a nation happy. And for the people of a nation to be happy, they must be in position to meet their basic daily needs. And they must be in position to move freely from one part of that country to the other and live in their houses without fear. That is the only time people could be happy. So whether you are in the parliament or you are in the executive, the essence of government is to make the people happy. And parliament, just as it's been practiced in the Gambia today, because of the democratic system, we build on the issue of separation of powers. And I always say, when you look at separation of powers, sometimes we take it to a length that becomes a bit worrisome. And sometimes people begin to look at separation of powers as if in a country you have 3 different governments running the country. Well, that's not quite correct, because the government is one. The government will have a president or a prime minister that heads the executive arm of government. There must be a speaker, a senate president that heads the parliamentary arm of government, and there's a chief justice that will end the judiciary. These 3 institutions, executive, the parliament, and the judiciary, makes the country and makes the government of the country. So though we can talk about separation of powers, but you cannot separate government because the government is one. And so sometimes as parliamentarians, you look at your party interests, and the national interests. It's like as if it's in the dynamic duo. Where do we go from here? And of course, you know that political parties, by their nature, always have their agenda. The ruling party will have their own, the political parties, position, and others will have their own. As a parliamentarian, you are representing a political party, either the ruling party or the opposition party. And there are issues to be discussed at the floor of the parliament, because parliament contributes to governance through debates, through motions, through your bills. And these bills or motions or issues could be brought from the ruling party, could be brought from the opposition parliamentarians. And in some cases, you see that there's a lot of contestation for relevance and political dominance, that if the majority party dominates the parliament, if somebody from opposition raises something, no matter how good it is, you want to bring it down. They say, shoot it down, oh, dead on arrival. Or if the opposition is fairly formidable, and even if the ruling party brings something that you know is useful for the development of the nation, you want to bring it down to make sure that the party is no longer popular so that they will lose the next presidential election. So really see that in the parliament, it's always difficult to operate, and you'll be convinced that you are doing the right thing. How do you balance the interests of your party and the interests of the state? But basically, what always attracts parliamentarian is that you are elected as a member of the Gambian Assembly, National Assembly. Yes, you belong to a political party, but the oath you took was an oath to serve the country. So you didn't take an oath to serve your party alone. You will serve your party as a senior member of your party, but the oath of office is to serve the country. That means that no matter what, national issues, issues that will bring development to the country, must take precedence over party interests. And that is key, because without the nation progressing, even the political parties will be of no relevance to the public. Because when the ordinary citizens say, look, like in Nigeria, they use the common word, dividends of democracy. They want to see the effect of democracy on their life. That effect cannot be brought to bear by the executive alone, but also by the National Assembly, irrespective of your political persuasion, or even if you're an independent candidate. In the Gambia, you have quite a number of independent candidates, which we don't have. Our laws in Nigeria don't have no provision for independent candidates for now, which is a very good thing. But whether you're an independent candidate or you work on the platform of opposition, a party, whether you're in parties in government or a parties in opposition, your interest must be the interest of the country. You must not compromise the interest of your party, no doubt about that, because you will protect your party. But at the same time, you will not frustrate the progress of the country. I was just asking Prof this day, because there was a time in Lebanon that for 1 year, 1 or 2 years, no budget was passed. When the rivalry between the political parties and contestation for political relevance became so severe, no budget was passed. Luckily for Lebanon, if the budget is not passed, the president can use the spend the same amount of money based on the previous year's budget. And for almost 2 years, the president used the previous year's budget to run. But you can see the frustration that will bring. That means that the president cannot initiate new projects because that one is not passed by the parliament. You cannot employ new people because there are no provisions for their salaries. You can only manage those who are there. So, and it can snowball into many sectors of the economy. But that's where you see the real problem between the political parties, the parliamentarian, the partisan politics, the parliamentarian, and the national interest. So let me not bore you, but let me conclude these brief remarks by drawing you back to, the Greeks. They really they are leaders in terms of modern civilization and so on. The Greeks look at the totality of human beings and human behavior in government and outside government, and they categorize or profile people into 3 broad categories of human beings. They call some groups the idiots. They call some others tribesmen. And they call others citizens. And when the Greeks call the people idiots, doesn't mean that those people are mentally retarded. They could have first class in the universities. But those people are very selfish people. They think about themselves alone. They don't think about others. Everything's self. I and me. And the Greeks feel that those categories of people are idiots. The second category they call tribesmen, and not necessarily people belonging to tribes, because every human being must belong to a tribe, and it's a good thing to belong to a tribe. Not just belonging to a tribe, but there are some people that whatever they think is just about their tribe. Maybe as a parliamentarian, every motion they will bring has to be with my people. Your people, your people. We are not looking at what affects others. Yes, you must protect the interests of your people because you are representing those people in the parliament. But at the same time, you must also know what affects every Gambian. So the Greeks feel that those who concentrate more on their tribes, they become a problem to the rest of society. And they call them tribesmen. And the third category they call citizens. They classify the citizens as those who obey the laws of the land, they toil for the growth of society, and everything they do, they are mindful about the effect of what they do on the next person. Even if they are driving their cars on the road, they are mindful about how they drive, how it will affect the people riding bicycles or trekking. The way they use their speakers when they are doing their functions, the mind, how the sound affect their neighbors. So the citizens, by the Greeks' philosophy, I think is that those who, while doing their work, whatever they do, they mind the impact of whatever they do on the public. Those are the group the Greeks call the citizen. So for my charge today, you honorable members of the National Assembly of this great country, the Gambia, I want all of you to be citizens of the Gambia. Thank you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, for that You called it a few remarks. It sounded like a magisterial message to all of the august members of this assembly. Is one which I think will resonate for the next 2 days and beyond. Members of the National Assembly of any country, including the Gambia, are elected on the basis of political parties or even on the basis of an independent platform on which they stand. But once elected, they must rise, transiting from being in the Greek explanation of that transition from being self-centered idiots, narrow-minded tribesmen, broad-minded, to becoming broad-minded citizens who carry the highest interest of the state and of the people as their motto in all that they do. And this is, I think, a message which we in Africa particularly still have to learn and to use effectively, insofar as in some of the most successful democracies around the world, the notion of the loyal opposition has always been an important part of the democratic experience. Loyal not because they drop their party platforms and principles, but because they understand that there are matters of state that are of a higher nature that must transcend every partisan consideration. And not everything, for example, national security or the welfare of citizens, should be subjected to partisan division and even stalemate. And we have seen that in some of the older democracies, where partisanship has overridden the national interest in a very negative manner. His Excellency cited the example of Lebanon, but we can even cite the examples of older democracies like the United States, where extreme partisanship simply creates a gridlock in government and frustration among citizens. So let us all aspire to be citizens, even in our role as elected members of parliament. It's now my great honor and pleasure, distinguished members of the National Assembly, to invite His Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of the Gambia, Honorable Badara Juf, representing His Excellency, President Adama Barrow, to give his special remarks. Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On the mandate of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, I would like to deliver his speech. But before I do so, Mr. Chairman, and go into the salutations, following up on the Greek reference, I am reminded of one of those after-dinner speeches of the proverbial story of creation. When the Lord created everything and everybody and the human being raised his hands and said, "My Lord, I move creation, the nomination for creation be closed," for fear of the fact that the Lord would create somebody more superior than him. The reference and the moral of that story is that I move, me, mine, which is in direct reference to the idiots, but also to the tribesmen. The Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, His Excellency President Goodluck